Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Investor Musician Summer Workshop Music and Money, day one. We're really excited to be here with you and to present this. This has been a dream of ours to do something for the music community for a long time, and we're just thrilled to be able to work with you guys and create this community and build and see where we go with this. For those of you who don't know me, who haven't been to our warm-up sessions or, seen a few things, my name is Andrew. I'm Andrew Bain, and I am the principal horn of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. One of the inspirations of this course was that my career has sort of progressed through the stages over many years, and so I wanted to share some of that with you guys, and just hopefully see that there's a pretty logical path to our development, and hope that we can share some of that with you. So I'm the horn professor at the Colburn Conservatory, as you can see. I get to do a few cool things around the place, play a little bit of the movies, but my background actually was in sport. I grew up in a very sporty family, played a lot of basketball. Freelanced as a young horn player, and then got a few jobs along the way in Australia and in Germany and in the States, and here we are. And Rupal, you're a rock star in your field. You can talk about you, I think.
Okay, so I have an engineering background. I actually come from a family of entrepreneurs. And so that's given me some insight into what it takes to, get a business up and running. I went and worked for Ford and some other large companies, got an MBA, got a master's in environmental science and sustainability, and worked for GE in the US. And that actually took me to Australia, where I met Andrew. Most recently, I've been studying tax, and I received the tax certification. And so I've really been focused my expertise around business and tax strategy, and specifically for the musical industry, since Andrew and I have been kind of going through that journey ourselves so much. And Invested Musician is kind of combining those two backgrounds that we have together, and really trying to help others, showing them the blueprint that we've sort of developed and all of our tips and tricks, and hopefully helping you guys achieve the next levels of your career and your financial goals. So an overview of our workshop. We know it's 3 days long, as we said, and we kind of wanted to break it out into a few days just so that we could give you a few bites each day and give you time to think about, what we talked about. We really want you guys to be able to take what we discuss here and hopefully put it into practice into your own lives. So here's day one, effective playing routines and planning for your financial future. You can see what's up for day 2 and 3. So some pretty exciting topics that we think are relevant, especially in this changing industry that we're experiencing right now.
Yeah, and from a musical point of view, we wanted to I wanted to structure the 3 different elements of our performance preparation. So the first day we're focusing more on the physical or the technical side, the instrumental side of how we prepare our practice, what we do physically. Day 2 is moving towards musical, how we prepare musically and how we develop our musical side, and what are the elements to make us a really great musician. And then day 3 was pretty self-explanatory, understanding mentally what goes into performing. So how do we prepare mentally? How do we use our brains away from the instrument to improve? And what sort of preparations do we need to do to perform at the highest level when we have the greatest amount of pressure? So that's the plan for the 3 days from a musical point of view, and we've sort of paired that. It's sort of like a lovely meal that we've paired each musical topic with a like-minded financial one. Isn't that right, Rupal?
Yeah, I mean, in this meal, am I the vegetables?
I was thinking more to do with food and wine, but sure.
Okay. Yeah, no, and just from an overview from the financial side, we're going to talk about something you can do today, right now, that can change and help you save money and redirect it towards the things that you need and value. And tomorrow we're going to talk about how to keep more of all of the hard-earned money that we do earn, and making sure that you're not giving anything extra on the tax side. And then finally, with those additional financial resources that we hope to help you discover, how you can put a portion of that back into yourself, into your career, and set yourself up for even further success. So that's kind of how the other pieces fit together.
Creating an effective playing routine is the topic of the day for music. So when we started thinking about this, and I thought of the creative title, I had a lot of ideas, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, I mean, there's an enormous amount that goes into this. So what I hopefully we can take away from here is just some ideas for how you can plan your practice and how you can get the most out of your time. I think as musicians, we've all been in a practice room where we walked into the practice room, had no idea what we're going to practice. We just knew what we were going to practice. We knew that we had to practice, sat down and started playing, and an hour and a half later came out with sort of no results and a lot of frustration, and didn't want to go back in for quite a while. So the idea of this morning session is to try and avoid that and give us structure. So the first question is, why is it important to have a routine? I'm glad you asked. That's a really great question. And it's important to have a routine. For me, if I don't have a routine in my practice or in my day, I really don't get anything done. Has anyone ever had the experience where you had a free day and you could do anything with the day, and you thought, I'm going to do a lot of practice today, and I'm going to clean the house, and I'm going to do the gardening, I'm going to get a lot of stuff done. And by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you hadn't done a warm up, you hadn't touched the instrument, you hadn't done any cleaning, and you just sat in front of the television. So this is why planning in terms of a routine is really, really important. I'm exactly the same. On a day off, my first thought is I'm going to get a lot of practice done. And normally, if I don't have a routine, if I don't have a plan, by 12 o'clock, I've done nothing. And then I get frustrated and I get stressed, and then I get anxious, and then I still don't do anything. And then by about 4 or 5 in the afternoon, I realize that I really need to do practice. So then I do 3 hours of panic practice, put in a lot of bad habits, waste a lot of time, and then generally it's just not a good look. So this is what's important for me, that I'm taking time to organize my routine. And then how do we make the most of our time? It's important that in our practice we're focusing on organizing the plan before we get into the practice room. So if we're not planned before we get into the practice room, we're just going to practice random things. So we're going to touch a little bit on that. And then how do we stay engaged with our practice? It's really important that we're not affected too much by, we wake up one day and we don't feel like practicing, or we wake up another day and we feel inspired to play Strauss. And we wake up the next day and we only want to play Mozart. These are really great things, but what's important is it's not going to help us with our development. And providing ourselves with an organized structure is the way that we're going to ensure that we have good long-term development, and also making sure that we are achieving something in the short term. So the first thing I want you guys to do is to think of a goal. I want everyone to think of their dream goal in their careers, probably music. So if you can dream big, there's no limitation. Just focus on where your dream situation would be. It may be playing as an extra player in the Los Angeles Philharmonic. It might be being the principal horn of the Berlin Philharmonic. It might be being a world-class soloist. It might be starting a string quartet. Any of those things. So this is a really handy thing to do for us to set a structure for our practice. So the goal setting is a really important thing. And from that peak goal, we can move down through the years to today. Your peak goal may be, maybe a year away, maybe 10 years away. But if you can work back from that point and then work to a week away. So now, if you can imagine, what would you set a goal for yourself for a week's time or 2 weeks' time? What can you achieve in a week? So for me, my example would be that I want to play Strauss 1 on a Facebook Live. If that terrifies you, then you're in the same camp as me. That terrifies me. So that's a really good goal for me to have. So that will then trigger the second phase. So this is what is known as an outcome goal. So my outcome goal for the week or 2 weeks would be to play a Strauss concerto as well as I can live on the internet. Right? Don't anyone hold me to that, please. And then what I need to work out from there is I've given myself the first point of structure. From there, I can work out what are the things that I need to be able to do in order to play Strauss 1. So the first thing I need to do is I need to learn the piece, right? So I need to have stamina. I need to have range. I need to have a bunch of dynamics, and I need to have good articulation. Is there anything else that anyone can think of? Strauss 1, good octaves.
I know that Andrew, and you kind of, it's not the focus of this conversation, but I'll just let you know that going from your dream to what you need to be doing on a weekly or daily practice is a very big exercise. Could you maybe just, I know we can't get into it in too much detail now, but can you just maybe talk a little bit about, things to consider when you're going from that big of a dream down to your weekly or?
Yeah, so basically, I think for most people, the dream situation may be several years away. So if you work out from your dream job, if your dream job, let's take, for example, if you're 21 years old, which I'm pretty close to, my dream situation is to be the principal horn of the Fiji Symphony, because it's a really nice place to live and it's very sunny. I'll just use that as a weird example. And so where do I need to be? Where do I need to be a few years before that? Let's say a generic top level orchestra, I want to be the principal bassoon player. So where do I need to be before that? Well, I need to probably have some principal experience. I'd probably need to have a job in a pretty big orchestra. Okay, so that would be my next goal, and then I would work back from there. So maybe in 2 years' time, I'd need to have the goal of having a position in an orchestra. And then maybe a year before that, I'd have to be, in order to get to that goal, what would I need to do? Well, I need to be making finals in auditions. I need to be creating a successful plan for auditions. I need to be doing great auditions. I'd need to be competitive to winning a job. So where do I need to be 6 months from now? Well, then I'd need to be making semifinals. I need to be getting out of the first round. I need to be, progressing and developing my plan. Where would I need to be then 2 months away? Well, I need to make sure that I knew all the repertoire and I was able to, perform at a high level. And then where would I need to be 1 month away? Well, I need to be working really hard on my excerpts and understanding the musical context of all the excerpts. And so as you can see, I'm gradually working back. And then as we develop our process towards those, so what do I need? What elements do I need in order to learn all of the excerpts? Well, I need to make sure that I understand the music. I need to make sure that I can get around the instrument. And that will then feed into how we practice. And all of these goals will feed to the big goal. So the big goal of being the principal clarinet of the World Orchestra is tied to all of the other goals. So all I need to do is focus on the next goal in front of me. Once I achieve that goal, I can reset my goals. But they're all feeding towards the peak goal. The peak goal is probably never going to change.
I was just going to share that, I don't know if this is interesting, but I was working at GE in one of my positions, and we would do exactly what Andrew is talking about for our business. And we would spend 3 months out of the year actually working backwards from 5 years. We had shorter term goals, but working 5 years back down to a weekly operating rhythm, they would call it. And we would schedule weekly reviews of certain things and activities and events, and then monthly reviews of how is that on track, and then quarterly reviews, for example. And the metrics and the success we were able to achieve by having those routines in place were really critical. So I just thought I would share that from a business perspective.
Yeah, it's really keeps us on track, and it funnels towards the larger goal. And So for me, this is an important exercise to go through, and it gives us some structure and it gives us hope. And so, because what's really difficult, I find, is if I were a student, or I'm recently out of college, or a freelancer, and my goal was to be the principal horn of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, it's, to me, is a pipe dream if I don't have structure. If I'm just thinking, how am I going to get from where I am at the moment to being the principal of a major orchestra, it can be quite daunting. But if I break that down and bring it down to today, and I work out, okay, so the next step that I'm going to make in a week's time, I'm going to be playing Strauss 1 for an audience of my closest friends on the internet. Okay, I can do that. It's achievable. It's realistic, and it gives me something tangible to work towards. And once I'm able to achieve that goal, then I move on to the next goal, and I keep progressing. And then one day I wake up, and what happened to me? I was the principal of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and that was pretty much the path that I was able to take, by keeping the chunks nice and small. One of the interesting things is there's a fantastic sports psychologist who I'm a fan of, Bob Rotella. He works with all the PGA professionals, works with a lot of basketball players, football players. I don't know if you know of his work, but he's worked with hundreds and hundreds of top level athletes. And the one thing that he said that he's noticed is that every athlete, he's worked with Michael Jordan and LeBron James, guys of this level. And he said what he noticed is that all of the guys who are at this peak level, whether they're making it in the NBA or the Major League Baseball or the golf, is that they started with a dream, and they had a dream that they wanted to achieve really something special. And that was the thing that kept driving them. And so it's important, and the dream doesn't have to be the same for everybody. Our dream may be, your dream might be to play Strauss 1 with an orchestra one day. That's a fantastic dream. It's a fantastic goal to have. And it's something that, gives you something to work towards. And this is what's very, very important to keep in mind. And there are a bunch of books. He wrote a book, he wrote several books, but he's written a book called Golf is Not a Game of Confidence. Oh, no, golf is a game of confidence. Get it right. But golf is not a game of perfect. Golf is not a game of perfect, and golf is a game of confidence. And Don Green has several books, Audition Success, Performance Success, that are really fantastic to look at. But there's a whole bunch of stuff online that can talk about this. So getting back to our structure, so once we've set the process goals of how I'm going to play Strauss 1, then I need to figure out what are the elements that I need to practice. What do I need to practice to do a good Strauss 1 performance? And so there are a bunch of technical things that I can extract from Strauss that I can practice away from the concerto, that are going to help me to improve my horn playing. So there's going to be scales, arpeggios, staccato, accents, large intervals, beautiful soft playing. And I want to put it together a plan where I'm practicing those technical elements as well as putting them into studies to extend those elements. And then I'm going to be doing some musical preparation. So I'm going to be listening to the piece a lot, mental preparation, in order for me to achieve my goal of playing Strauss 1 in front of the internet. Okay. So that's a small breakdown of how I would be structuring, working towards my goal. So how do we structure our practice? So we've had a look at like how we can be inspired to prepare, how we can structure our development through our playing routine, but how do we actually put it in place? So it's important for us to make sure that in our practice day, and going back to what we said at the beginning, where we have a day off, for example, and we forget to plan, we need to prioritize our practice. As musicians, what I discovered, and I went through this when I was a student, I was the worst one at this. I would schedule my lectures I'd go to. I was I was a good boy. I made sure that I turned up to everything, and I never missed a lecture, and I always went to class, and I went to the rehearsals, all these things. So I put that in my diary. I would always write down my lecture times, my rehearsals, the concerts. All of these things are very, very locked in your schedule. And as a musician, we wouldn't dream of missing a rehearsal. We wouldn't dream of not turning up to a concert. But we would, skip a practice session, maybe not organize our practice. And this is the thing that if we focus on, is going to give us much more structure, much more ability to get the most out of our practice. So there are things in our schedule, such as work commitments, appointments, doctor's appointments, things that you can't change, classes, rehearsals, concerts, that are going to build the basis of our daily schedule. And then for me, the next thing that I want to put in is my practice time. I want to make sure that that's in, and once it's in the calendar, it's as fixed as anything else. Obviously, there are going to be exceptions to this. If there's a sudden emergency or things like this, obviously practice or anything can go out of the window at that point. But we want to get into the mindset that practice is something that we schedule, something that is vital to our daily operation. And then the third thing that we would schedule is the optional stuff, leisure time. You would obviously, along a similar line to the practice, we're putting in family time and food and sleep. These things are good. You probably don't need to schedule sleep. That's probably going to happen pretty naturally. So it's really important that we write it in, and you organize, so that the number one point of the keys to an effective routine is prioritize. Prioritize your time and make sure that you're allocating enough time. Now, how much time is enough time? That will vary. That will vary to your level of, what your position is, and it will vary to what instrument you play. If you're a pianist, you can practice for 8 hours a day. If you're a horn player, you're going to be doing 3 to 4 hours a day. So you need to effectively manage that time. And at this point, we're only talking about actual time in the practice room. There are other 2 elements of practice that we'll talk about on Thursday and Friday. That's the musical practice and the musical focus, and the mental practice and the mental focus. And all 3 of these areas are really important to us achieving our potential. But today we're just going to be talking about time in the practice room, time with the instrument. So if I didn't have a job at the moment, which is the case, given that we have no concerts, my goal is to be doing 3 to 4 hours a day. And then how do I break that practice down? So there's a lot of well, let's move on to point number 2. In terms of, I've sort of jumped ahead of myself a little bit, right? So communicate. In terms of prioritizing our time, communicating is important. You've got to communicate with your family. You've got to understand that the impact of our life is going to also affect your practice planning. So if you're living in an apartment, you can't practice at 6 in the morning. You can't practice at 10 o'clock at night, unless you have a practice mute, or unless you're playing on an instrument that's silent. Maybe there are something like that. So communicate with the people around you. Communicate with your family. Understand that they understand the importance that you need your scheduled time to practice, and have them communicate with you when it's not appropriate for you to be practicing. So, for example, if I was to set a practice time at 7 o'clock in the evening every day, I would be communicated to very quickly that this was not appropriate, because we have 2 small children who need to be put to bed at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, you can't leave me alone at 7 o'clock at night. But I have noticed that, when he first started to do this, it was kind of funny, because I was thinking like, well, I don't need to know the details of when you need to practice. That's fine. But he was making sure that he was getting my buy-in, that he was going to be focused time on that, on practice at the time, and he was not going to be available. So I kind of got it afterwards. But yeah, it was very helpful for him to let me know that that was dedicated time, and for him to also just, work with me on, times when it wouldn't be a great idea to lock yourself away in a room.
Yeah. And it's also, for those of you who live with roommates, it's important to communicate with them and be considerate of their time. And if you're living with other musicians, this level of communication is really important, and it can go into the plan. So there's quite a lot of planning that goes into a good practice routine. There's nothing worse than you deciding, I'm going to practice at 4 in the afternoon, and then you realize that your roommate is in a business meeting at that time, and it's the only place you can practice. So communicating and planning is really important. And of course, as we said, the other thing is you've got to make sure you do it. And this is where setting these structured times and also managing the practice schedule. So for me, there's a lot of research that is out there that says basically adult humans find it difficult in a focused sense to concentrate for more than half an hour at a time. For most men, that's half an hour. We'd be pretty happy with that, right? I mean, it's half an hour is a long time. But for most of us, to be able to maintain focus on practice for more than half an hour is not going to be productive.
Maybe, Andrew, you could just talk about what you've done differently through the pandemic and how that's changed from your routine before COVID.
So I've found, in terms of practice for me, it's been a really inspiring time, which sounds weird. Like we haven't played a concert since the beginning of March. I haven't really left the house to do anything since the beginning of March. And a lot of people are finding it difficult to be motivated. I've actually found this the opposite in terms of my development as a horn player and a development as a musician. It's given me enormous amounts of time to be able to focus on the areas where I'm deficient and that I really want to ingrain really good habits. So my practice structure has changed from maintaining the quality of my routine, my technical routine, and expanding that every day, but fitting that into the rhythm of the job. So we had a period at the beginning of the year where we had enormous concerts. We had Mahler 2. The following week was Götterdämmerung and Schoenberg Chamber Symphony. The following week after that was Heldenleben and Don Quixote. And then a couple of weeks after that, we did some other crazy, huge project. And so it was just week after week of enormous physical and mental work. So in the practice routine, I would spend a lot of time doing the opposite. So I would be, where we had Heldenleben, I would be doing a lot of soft stuff, a lot of flexibility stuff, a lot of things that are keeping me fresh. But I couldn't do a lot of big playing because a week of Heldenleben and Don Quixote back to back is a physical grind, and physically you're feeling, pretty worn out by the end of that period. So I need to practice the opposite things. I find now during COVID, I can practice whatever I want, and I really can be honest with myself and look at the areas where I really want to improve and spend some significant time on them, and not worrying about the outcome in the short term, because I know I'm not going to be playing in an orchestra anytime soon. So I can spend that time to experiment. And my practice time, for me, one of the most important things out of my practice time is that I treat it as an experiment. Every practice session, I want to learn something. I want to develop something. I want to try something new. And I want to eliminate the things that are not productive. And I want to really focus on, distilling down those things that are going to really help me under stress. So my sessions, as well as discovering things, what I'm focusing on is really making sure, this will be good, making sure that I'm open to being honest with myself and honest with what I need to work on, and that I'm not scared to make changes. That's a really important thing in my practice. So that's what's changed for me during COVID, because I don't have that pressure. I don't have the pressure to deliver a result. So I really can dig deep on the things that I want to work on without worrying. It's no problem. Getting back to the time thing. So half an hour chunks. So half an hour chunks of practice for me have been really, really valuable. And it enables you to really work hard, and you know that time is going to be over soon. Now, if you don't have a huge amount of time, if you don't have like all day to practice, half an hour, 10-minute break, half an hour is completely fine. But you need to take that 10 minutes to refresh your brain. Go for a walk outside, have a drink of water, answer an email. Probably not the most ideal thing to do, but if you need to, if that makes you feel better, but break up your practice in that way. And then for me, and then this is sort of going a little bit further, but I will actually break my practice down into 5-minute chunks. And we can go into this a little bit more at later times. It's probably not the best time to break down the exact practice schedule, but But I will actually, as part of my, so if we go back to the Strauss goal, so the goal, remembering I'm going to play Strauss 1 in a week, live on the internet. Even saying that makes me terrified. But anyway, so I'm figuring out what elements am I going to be practicing, what technical exercises, what studies are we going to be doing, how am I going to practice the Strauss, and I'm only going to be working on those in 5-minute chunks. So if I want to practice Strauss for half an hour every day, I'm not going to be doing it in one half-an-hour hit. This is really, really important. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break it into 5-minute chunks. I'm going to do 5 minutes. So the first session of my day, the first half an hour, is always going to be warm-up routine. Warm-up fundamentals. Simple. I want to set my mechanism. I want to make things as easy as possible. I want to set things up so that for the rest of the day, my mechanism is organized. I'm reminding my brain, this is how we play the horn. This is what we want to be doing. So very, very similar to what we go through in our warm-up classes. Warm-up classes are a little bit extended version of that. So we've done the warm-up and then we're expanding the routine, the basic playing routine. But that's the first session. And then the other 5 to 7 sessions, depending on how much practice you're going to be doing, it's I'm going to do 5 minutes of Strauss in each one of those sessions. So that does a couple of things. One thing is that it enables you to focus on really the most, the most fine details in that 5 minutes, and it makes you work your backside off. Is anyone who's been into a practice room, gone into a practice room and you practice Strauss and you go, I'm just going to practice Strauss. And then 45 minutes later, you've come out and you're like, I practiced Strauss for 45 minutes and all you've got is a sore face and a lot of mistakes and not a really huge amount of, to really get from it, right? This happened to me all the time. As a student, I would go into the practice room, I've got to practice, and I'd practice until I'd made some sort of development. I'd made some sort of improvement in my Strauss. But all I was doing was just going until I, it sort of either got through the piece or felt as though, I could say, yeah, okay, that's enough. I've done some work. I never was really achieving anything because my focus wasn't actually on getting really intensely working on the elements or intensely working on the piece. It was just to build up time. And I thought if I played it for long enough, I'd eventually get better. Whereas if I'm focusing on, I'm just going to work for those 5 minutes, it's amazing how much work you can get done in 5 minutes. It's just, it is incredible. And then if you add that 6 times or 5 times after that, you do half an hour of Strauss a day that way, you're going to find that the progress you make is really important. So it's focusing on the process of what you're practicing, not the result of each session. We generally try to practice until we feel as though we've got better. When I practice, what I focus on is how can I work as hard as I can and really, really get to the nitty gritty of what I'm working on. And then after that 5 minutes, I move on to the next thing. There's a fantastic app that is very, very simple. It's maybe a $3 app. I think there's a free version of it, and it's called Seconds Pro, and it's an interval trainer. It's a sports interval training app, like for fitness. It's on my phone and it goes with me everywhere. And I've actually set up a bunch of timers on that program. So I will play for 5 minutes. I'll have a 30-second break and 5 minutes. And I've laid out my 6 sessions. I've got a template for 6 sessions, laid out those sessions, and I press go at the beginning of every session. I work as much as I can on whatever it tells me to do, and then I move on to the next thing. So it's really, really super important. And this is where we go into expand and adapt. That it's important that we are making these decisions before we get into the practice room, so that we have the possibility to, at the end of the week, to actually assess and measure what's going on. So that I'm going to set my program for the week, and this is a really great drill for all of us to do actually this week. It's okay, where are you going to be in 7 days' time? What's your goal? And then, okay, so how am I going to be able to expand and adapt my practice so that I can best get to that goal? And the measure is at the end of the week, I'm going to be able to play Strauss 1 in front of a bunch of people, and it's going to be a really good performance. And I'll be able to measure that because I'll know what I was like at the beginning of the week. But practicing spending time to plan your practice in this way and really focus on these 5-minute chunks enables you to get faster much quicker. Now, the best example, Rupal, do you want to say something?
I do. Can you see me? Yeah, I do. I was just going to say that, you know, the other benefit of measure is to not only kind of see an improvement that you'll hopefully have accomplished in that time, but also to just sort of validate the routine that you've set up. And if you didn't get the result that you were hoping for, why? You know, did you maybe not structure it the right way, or what could you do to adjust the routine that you'd set up? So don't feel like you're, you know, it's not about having the perfect, and I'm speaking about this from the business side, of course, since I'm not a musician, although I did play clarinet in high school. Does that count for anything? But yeah, so you want to, you know, it's not so important to have the perfect routine set up right away, but more to just have something that you can start to adapt and adjust and customize, and eventually you'll figure out what works for you. That's what I.
So then at the end of the week, what's also important with that goal setting is that you give yourself a reward. So I don't want to put my brain and my body through the torture of building up, for example, to play Mile of 5. And then at the end of a Mile of 5 performance, I'm just going to go home and go to bed. While you may feel like that, I guarantee you won't, but while that may be, you know, it may be possible for some people, it's actually really not great for your brain and really not great for your body, because you're putting your body through a lot of work. You're wanting to achieve at a high level. You're practicing hard. You've done a lot of rehearsal. You've been through a lot of stress. In terms of performing, there's a lot of stress involved in performing. It's a you know, if you're playing in front of 2,300 people, Mile of 5, and you have to stand up and look like a bit of a clown for, you know, 15 minutes of the third movement, your body and your brain are going through some level of trauma. It's important that, you know, you reward them for that, and because they're going to come with you on that journey for the next concert and the next concert and the next concert after that. So give yourself a reward and set it up before you get started, so you know you're going to receive it at the end. And it's what's also important. Sometimes we have concerts that don't go as well as we would hope, and other times they go great. For me, one of the important things that I've sort of worked out for myself is that I reward myself for the amount of effort that I've put into the process, not so much on the result of the concert. Anyone can have a bad day, anything can go wrong in a concert, and anything can go great. There are some nights, and it happens very rarely for me, where I'll just play and I can't miss anything. Everything comes out great. It works perfectly. And then there are other nights where it's just a struggle. And I try to even those out for performance, because in performance, things can happen. And we're going to talk a lot on Friday about mental preparation for performance, and how to understand how your brain actually operates under stress, and what expectation you can have for your mental state in performance. And I think this is a really valuable tool to understand that even the best performers in the world operate at probably about 90% of their absolute peak performance in any given concert. It doesn't mean that they make 90% of the notes. It just means that everything's not perfect. It sounds amazing. When you listen to Yo-Yo Ma play the cello, it's incredible. You think, how could anything be better than that? But that's probably about 90% of what his level of perfection would be. And so understanding that, and understanding not to get too high, not to get too low in performance, but reward yourself for the effort that you've put in and the work that you've put in through your structure. And I guarantee you, if you structure your practice, this is just one way of thinking about practice. But from this little chat, I would hope that we can sort of take away that it is important to plan, it is important to structure your practice. It is important to think about it before we get into the practice room. And we make these decisions before you actually open that door. So that when you go into the practice room armed with the instrument, you know exactly what you're going to be practicing. You know the drills, you know the exercises, you know the study that you're going to work on, you know the structure of the practice, which is why the Seconds Pro app is really useful, because it just keeps you moving. And you just press a button and it'll tell you what to do, because you've predetermined that. And if you're setting out a practice plan for the week, then you've spent time. It might take you an hour to actually nut through exactly what you need to practice to get the most out of that week, but you've spent that time to practice it, to set up that practice. You've given it the thought, you've put the structure in. Now all you need to do is follow that structure. So the practice is not something where you're making decisions about what you need to practice. You're just executing and working as hard as you can in each 5-minute increment. So hopefully that gives you a little plan. So basically, as a recap, as a wrap up, we set up the big goal and set all of our goals in line with that. We set up our practice plan, develop your practice plan, spend some time work out how you work best, and then build the routine. And then all things will be great.
I'm excited to share, what Andrew and I have done on our financial side, and specifically how we've, learned and used different strategies to improve our financial position throughout the years. And as we're talking about goals, the same thing goes on your financial side as it does on your music side, which is you need to have sort of a big goal and know why you're saving and what kind of future you're trying to build for yourself financially. We all have different reasons for savings, and we're all in different times in our lives with different abilities and resources. And so this changes frequently. And so it's just always good to kind of keep in mind and have some short-term goals, long-term goals, but it's important to think about and actually just figure out what those goals should be. And since this is a music and money workshop, we wanted to kind of show how Andrew and I think about finances and how it integrates into the life of a musician. I've got this little diagram here. This is your musical career. Obviously, you're, eventually, or you're already in this position where you're able to earn, and that is you and your account. And then some of that, we believe, needs to be put back into your musical career to continue to grow your earning potential. And so we see this as a reinforcing cycle that kind of, expands as it gets bigger and bigger. And, the more you earn, the more ability you have to be able to reinvest and develop and learn and grow. And this happens in everyone's career. Well, ideally, you started, a lower position, and then as you learn more, you earn more, and you learn more, and you earn more. And so the same thing goes here as well. And we really see that connection between, music and money here.
So Rupal.
Yeah.
So this reminds me actually of the start of my career. And I moved to Sydney from Adelaide. I grew up in Adelaide, and I moved to Sydney to study with Jeff Collinson, who's at the time was principal horn of the Australian Opera and Ballet Orchestra. And I ended up succeeding him in that position. But I made a decision early on that one of the reason that I moved to Sydney was because I wanted to win an orchestral job. And so my focus was on my budgeting. I wanted to make sure I earned enough. I had some teaching work that I'd lined up. I wanted to earn enough in my teaching that I'd pay my rent. And then my next priority was that every week I was going to have a horn lesson. And I was going to make sure that I went to hear the orchestra as often as possible. And then I bought whatever books that I needed to buy back in the days when you could still buy books, music books, and buy as many CDs as I can, because that's what CDs were going on back then. But that was a really important part for me, to make sure that I was investing in that, because that was the whole reason that I'd gone to Sydney. wasn't to make my millions in Sydney. It was to develop my horn playing and get to the next level. So I'd had enough to cover what I needed to cover, and then the next priority was to make sure that I was investing in what was going to help my playing. And then of course, in turn, as I got better as a player, I magically started to get more gigs, and then I could invest more. So it's a really important thing, I think, at this time. And you're going to talk probably a little bit about savings, but it's really important for us to keep in mind that seeking out what is going to improve our playing at this time is a really valuable investment.
Yeah, no, that's really relevant. Thanks. Also mention is that if you kind of imagine this as a train route, and from when you receive your paycheck and you earn money, your money sort of travels through different stops on its way to the bank account. One of them might be taxes, and so your money gets filtered out a little bit, a little less comes through that stop. And then another one might be spending, and that's the one we want to talk about today. There's other stops that your money kind of travels through before it gets into your bank account, where you have the ability to invest in your future, back into your career, and everything that Andrew was talking about. But since this is a very large concept and there's a lot of things we can cover, Andrew and I wanted to pick something that we could share with you today, something that we do actively. And we think it might help you save money and specifically, in a way, earn money from yourself, from changing your own behavior and your own sort of spending habits. So you can earn money from outside employers or the industry is maybe limiting some of that right now, but here's something you can do right now. And it's really easy. So that is what we're going to talk about today, prioritizing spending. So just as in, when you guys were talking about practice and Andrew was talking about practice, this is just another exercise that you want to practice and put into your sort of personal routine. And it's just prioritizing spending. I'm going to talk to you about a system that we use. It's the ERNS system, which is eliminate, reduce, negotiate, and switch. It's really fun. You're going to enjoy it. Where you're going to do this is looking at your credit card and bank statements and just really understanding your expenses and kind of reviewing where your money is going. The goal is to reduce your monthly expenses as much as you can. I'm going to give you an idea of how much we save doing this. And, the reason why you do this is because you do have those initial goals that you set out at the beginning, but we tend to forget about it and we make impulse purchases or we, spend money thinking that we have enough, to cover the other things that we need. But doing an exercise like this and building it into a routine is going to just make sure that your spending is aligning towards your goals. And that's just going to help you get your goals faster. And I don't just mean that financially, but I also mean that professionally. So, if you are able to save and make sure that your money isn't going to areas that you don't need, then you've got that financial resource to put it towards, that extra teaching or that extra, travel for an audition or whatever you want to do to develop your career further. So that's that reinforcing cycle. All right, so let's get to it. This is a workshop, so we're going to actually do it. All right, so the first one is eliminate. So the exercise is really simple, guys. We're just going through, looking at our expenses and trying to find something or multiple things that we can eliminate. And I'm going to go through this one by one. So again, reduce. So what can we reduce and, cut out a little bit of? Is there something that we can negotiate? This one's a little harder, but I'm going to talk you through some things that I've learned. And then finally, anything you can switch. So that's the system that we use. And just so you can, I don't know if this will get you excited about it, but it's a system that's worked and my family's been using it for a long time. I just sort of recently formalized it maybe 5 years ago and then started really putting it into a routine. And that's when I started to see the results. So here's the results of my last 3 months, because I like to measure, as Andrew said, it's important. We eliminated some subscriptions, some travel, some eating out. We reduced our internet, we reduced our mortgage payments. I was able to negotiate on a couple of things. The delivery of my washing machine was late. I had to install some new equipment. We got rid of our cable, went to Hulu, and that's how much I saved in the last 3 months doing those things.
Well, good.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I get to, so that's just extra money in my pocket that I can put towards, whatever it is that we do need. But so I just wanted to give you an example. These are actually things that, I have done in the last 3 months. So, and this is relative to what's going on with the pandemic. So we turned it up a notch and did a couple extra things. Okay, so let's try it. Okay, it's like I said, it's pretty simple. We're gonna just go one by one, and then I want you to let me know in the chat what you guys find that you might be able to eliminate. So have a look at your expenses right now. Grab your credit card statement. I'm gonna give you about a minute. Okay, so I want you to spend some time and do this. It won't take that long, and you're gonna start to get into a habit. But have a look at your accounts. See what you think that you can eliminate. Yeah, eating out's been a good, you have a choice. It's something that we've reduced. Actually, we cut out altogether, right, Andrew? We just did it for your birthday recently. I don't know about you guys. We were eating out a lot. So we've saved a lot of money by doing that.
Rupal, I just had an idea. I'm one thing that I'm really bad at, and I'm sure I'm not the only person in this room, although maybe I am. is this idea of us subscribing for something for free for a limited period of time and then forgetting that we've subscribed to it until 6 months later. I think I'm really bad at doing that, and it's something, you know, if you regularly sort of check your, this is seems really basic and really, you know, it probably doesn't need to be said, but check your credit card statements and check your bank statements, because it's quite amazing what we end up paying for that we don't even realize. Yeah, I'd got a free subscription when I first moved to the US. I got a free subscription to Wine Connoisseur magazine, because I thought, well, you know, I need to learn about American wine. This is very important. And it was a free 12-month subscription. So of course I didn't even think about it until after 2 years. I realized I've been paying like $13 a month for something. And literally I've read about two articles, not two magazines, two articles out of magazines for a good 2 years before I realized probably I didn't really need to be spending money on doorstops.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. And you guys should be aware that that's a common business model. And, you know, that's something that that is how they get revenue. That is something that they're counting on. So being able to look and review your expenses is really important. That's a great example. I think maybe, you know, as I was putting this slide together and talking to Andrew about it, he was saying, well, but just make sure that you're paying attention to not eliminating things that you need to earn extra income. So I don't know, Andrew, if you wanted to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of goes back to the you know, the thing that I sort of mentioned before in Sydney, is that, you know, organizing your priorities for what you're spending is really the key to that. And then, you know, once you can go from there, I think one of the questions that came out, and this is a really valid one for us as musicians, and particularly people who are taking auditions, is you know, how to make decisions about investing in your auditions. It's very expensive to get to auditions. It's very, you know, there's flights, accommodation, food while you're there. You got to give yourself a few days either side, and then there are a lot of them. And so how do you decide? Well, it's going to be different for everyone. But there are many of the orchestras, particularly in the United States, that will actually accept tapes, you know, or, you know, tapes. What am I talking about? Accept recordings as like a pre audition, and if you're not sure, if you're not sure whether you're going to take that audition, that's maybe a good route to go down. The other thing that I would recommend is, and now this is a really useful thing to do, most orchestras will be open to listening to people play for them. Some orchestras, it's against the rules for you to have any contact with, you know, the section or the people in the section to play for them. But if that is an option, I wouldn't hesitate to actually contact the members of the section and say, you know, would it be possible for me to set up a Zoom meeting or a lesson with you online and play with you, or could I possibly send you some recordings of my playing to, you know, for some comment. If you know those people, you can get a pretty honest feedback about, you know, is it worth, you know, me spending $1,000 to go there? I'd have to say though, for auditions, there's no guarantee one way or another. I mean, there are auditions that I've been to in the past where I was sure that I was going to win the job. There was no question in my mind it was going to be an issue, and I turned up and you know, not even close. And there are other auditions where I thought, oh, I'm sort of wasting my time, and those are the auditions that actually went well. So it is a difficult choice, but I think there are things you can do to mitigate your risk in terms of your expenses. And I think trying to reach out to the section or play for people who, you know, who are going to give you honest feedback about, you know, what are your chances. If you're going to audition for the Berlin Philharmonic, it's going to be an expensive trip if you get an invitation. But if you play a Con 8D and you're going to play a Con 8D at the audition for the Berlin Philharmonic, you know, I'll give you my own personal advice. I wouldn't do that, because it's not going to help you. But that's, you know, so you know, if you're going to audition for the Los Angeles Philharmonic, I can talk about our process and we can get into that at a later stage. But I mean, we will listen to everyone who wants to play, for sure. But you know, it's important to consider these things, absolutely, because you don't need to be wasting. If you've got, you know, it's going to cost you $1,000 to attend an audition that you probably don't have an enormous amount of chance to win, then maybe that $1,000 can be spent investing so that you can be better for the next audition that comes up. So these are you know, considerations to be made.
Yeah, lots to think about. And so I think the summary there is, look at things that you are not using, that you don't need, and eliminate them. If it's something that can help further your ability to earn income or earn it faster, or to further your career and develop it, then those are things that you want to just, think about a little further. All right, so the second is, where can you maybe take a haircut and reduce? So have a look at your same expenses and things that you maybe didn't have an E next to, or you didn't circle for an E. What might you be able to reduce? And while you're doing that, the couple of things that Andrew and I were able to do is on our phone bill, we just, modified some of our settings. We didn't need our international roaming plan right now. And there's lots of things you can turn up and down. It's a little bit of a hassle, and that's what they're counting on as to how to, maintain that billing level for you. But it's a quick way to get, some extra cash in your pocket, which, there's no harm in that. All right, so let me know, what else did you guys find that you can do that you could reduce? And I think it's great that people are putting it in the chat, because, hopefully we can learn from each other too and see, yeah, phone bill, car insurance, cable, yeah, eating out, yeah, even your electricity bill, water bill, those are things that you can adjust, how much air conditioning you use. So you have control over a lot of your financials, even, and that's regardless of what's going on in the world around us, which is another story. Okay, good. Andrew, I don't know if you had any other examples around things that you think would be helpful from a musician perspective in reducing, but just chime in. Otherwise, I'll jump to the next one.
I mean, the only thing that comes to mind is buying stuff in bulk, but it's not a reduction. It is a reduction in the long term, but it's in the short term it may cost a little more, but you're going to save a lot.
Yeah. Well, and one thing with reducing is you might not even know if you can or cannot reduce it until you call up, the provider or whoever's giving you that service or that benefit. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have a home or you live in a home, but for the home mortgage, we didn't even realize that our bank was offering, the ability to push payments out. So there's, you don't know until you kind of ask. And so that's part of it, is just kind of getting comfortable with asking and finding out. So even if you don't find any big wins here in the reduction, maybe you can try and find out and talk to some other friends. Yeah, rent. That's awesome. Yeah, negotiating a reduction in rent. We're going to talk about negotiating next, because that's I think that's a really interesting one. This is where I tend to get some of the bigger savings, and it of course requires a little bit more work. How many of you guys like to negotiate? I mean, it's something I actually enjoy, but I've done a lot of it. All right. Yeah. Okay, there's a mix. Yeah, it can be awkward. I, put this picture up here of a therapy session, because there's a lot of different ways you can try to negotiate, and you have to figure out what works best for you. And you have to keep your cool, because, sometimes it can be stressful and intense, especially if you've really, feel like you didn't receive the, good or service or whatever that the business had promised. So, all right, now have a look at your expenses and see, is there anything that you think you might be able to negotiate? Nice. I know that whenever we make a large purchase, when our washing machine was supposed to be delivered, and I mentioned this at the beginning, it was one of the savings I had negotiated. It was late 2 weeks and we had a broken washing machine. It kind of worked, but we had to manually do some things to it. So I explained that hardship, and I just sort of came at it from an approach of being vulnerable and transparent, and really tried to communicate the difficulty and how I had purchased that washing machine, because it had said it was going to be delivered by this date, but then, this company pushed it out 2 or 3 weeks. It was a really long time. And they gave me a credit of $150. It was great. And I didn't even have to ask for it. It was just sort of me talking about the difficulty that, that company had caused. And then just sort of saying, is there anything you can do? And more often than not, those sales or, this customer service in general they have some leeway to negotiate. Actually, Andrew's brother works in this works in this department in Australia.
Yeah. My brother works in what's called the saves department of a phone company. It's like AT&T. And his job is, when people ring up and want to cancel their service, his job is to make sure that they don't. And so what ends up happening is they get great deals because the company doesn't want to lose their business. Even if they have to give a big discount, they want to keep the customer. So his job, and every company like this has these people and have these policies that, if you want to cancel your contract or cancel your subscription, they will say, okay, we'll give you a special deal for the next 18 months or 2 years or whatever it is. So it's always handy to ask if you're thinking of going down that path. But if you also just know that if you're calling up actually to cancel, they're going to try and make you sign up for something at the same time. So it works both ways.
Negotiating can go both ways. So you can negotiate price down, or you can negotiate where you have that same price, but you can get more value. And either way, it's a win. You should be able to get something out of it. There's actually this company called Bill Cutters. I haven't used them, but I was checking them out. They will, because negotiation can be difficult for some people, and it takes time and effort, they will do all your negotiating for you, and they will just take 50-50. So it's completely free. They have obviously realized that these companies are overcharging people so much that even 50% of what they save is enough for them to run their business. So I hope that you guys just walk away with the fact that, negotiating can, if you can get comfortable with it, and if you just ask, is there anything you can do on price? We'd really appreciate it. This is a difficult time. Just see what they say. People are human, and they empathize, and they have the ability. Most businesses aren't going in with their, final walk away, take it or leave it. That's not a great business model. That's never really worked. So in the past 20 years of when I've been working in business, negotiation is something we do on a daily basis. And it's not sort of a, take from some person and give it to another person. It's more about, how do you find something that works for everybody? So it's a more like holistic, collaborative solution, as opposed to, it's not a you win, I lose scenario. We even negotiate, I don't know how many of you guys do this, but whenever we do Airbnbs and travel, when Andrew has to go to festivals or events and things, we negotiate with every Airbnb host that we stay at, or we try at least. The last one is, what can we switch? And this is just, swapping one thing for another. Our example is we, don't have our gym membership now. We walk outside. We got a little inflatable pool for the kids. And then we also stopped getting cable. We switched to Hulu. You can also, in highly competitive industries, if you see lots of commercials for phone companies, for example, switching is an option where you might be able to save and negotiate. So get a reduced price and a better deal with a different company. So when it's really competitive, that's when switching, or very high cost too, you can switch and see how you might be able to save. So, all right, take a minute and look at your, have a look at your expenses, see what you might be able to switch. And I love the store brand groceries. That's a great one. Yeah. Buying generic groceries. Yeah. Bank accounts, where you bank. I know Andrew's been doing more Skype lessons. So I think he was talking about that earlier, about, ways that he's seen students also, instead of traveling for visiting lessons, that they're doing, video lessons. So
I think now is a really great time, because everyone is a lot more comfortable with this medium. That it used to be, particularly people who are undergraduates going into schools, or looking at graduate schools. Normally the thing is, you have to fly around the country to 15 different universities to try and, to meet with the teacher and have a look. And I mean, sure, if you're aware of the campus and you're aware of the situation, and it's only a situation where you want to meet with a particular teacher there, online is now a really good way to do things. And I find actually you can learn a lot about the connection that you have with the teacher online as well. And maybe you can afford to have more than one session with that particular teacher. And also you can send them recordings, get them, send recordings. Don't be worried to send them recordings and ask, if they have a listen, and send some comments back and some feedback. That's actually a really good way of doing it. Because the other thing is you present yourself in a way that you've controlled as well. So from a musical point of view, you're actually getting to, you're actually feeling comfortable. You're going to present something that you're proud of. And it's going to give the teacher a really good idea of what level you're actually playing at. It's sometimes, everyone can have a bad day, right? So if you fly all the way to Los Angeles to have a lesson with, me, for example, and, you're not feeling great and you're a little bit nervous and I'm difficult, which I'm not, don't worry. Then you, you may feel, that's a wasted opportunity. Whereas if, you can make a really nice recording of something, send it to the teacher and ask them for comments, and then maybe meet them afterwards online. And then if things are going, after that, and you may feel as though you want to go out and visit them. But these are definitely options. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I saw someone put in haircuts in there, and I've been trying to get Andrew to let me give my haircut for a few months, but he's I cut the boys' haircuts, and it's been a learning curve, but I still feel like I'm doing a pretty good job.
Yet I've seen those haircuts, right?
Well, Sebastian moved that one time. So, all right. So yeah, look and see what you guys might be able to switch. And all right. So that's the exercise basic. That's it, guys. Like, we did it in 20 minutes here and you were able to find a lot of things. It's not hard. It's not meant to be hard. I know with finance, it needs to be something easy that you can do that that's going to get you results. So that's why we've got this ERNS system. It's something Andrew and I use. It's worked for us. I've already saved the $1,300 in 3 months. The more you practice it, the better you will be. Obviously, you guys are very familiar with that concept, and the more comfortable you'll start to know kind of boundaries and whether or not you're dealing with a vendor that you can negotiate and what kinds of things you can negotiate. And also you'll pay attention to when you're, signing up for that trial subscription and it says 30 days, we're going to start to charge you. And you maybe put a calendar notification in your calendar that says, hey, reminder, cancel this because you're going to be charged start to be charged $30 a month. By the way, if that does happen, you can still call them and let them know that you meant to cancel and try to negotiate some of it back. I've had to do that a couple times. All right, so that's the system. I hope that's pretty straightforward. We have to remember why we're doing it. This all ties back to that big goal, that financial goal that we have. We're trying to save to travel for that audition, or we're trying to save for college or to buy a house or to get that car, to be able to study with that teacher in Germany, or, whatever your goals are. Having additional money in your pocket is going to help you achieve them. And we think this is pretty easy to do. So here's the exercise that we talked about. It's just prioritizing your spending. I said all of this at the beginning. This is a system. You just review your expenses, looking at your bank statements, credit cards, or wherever you have your expenses. I'd love to get into more about how to organize that, but we don't have time. See what you can reduce on your monthly expenses, and note that it's something that you can change and go up and down with. So you can kind of, if a couple months, especially in industries where income is seasonal or cyclical, or it changes, year to year, or, things like that, it's really important to be able to know what expenses you can kind of turn up and down to help make sure you have the financials you need to not only pay for the things that you need to live and to further your career, but also, things that you want so you can enjoy your life. We're doing this to just make sure that everything aligns with our goals, and that'll keep us on track to getting our goals faster, which is great. And those wins will be really exciting when we get there. And the routine, I just suggest you do this every 3 months. So the exercise of reviewing your expenses maybe takes 30 minutes. And as you guys start to really develop this skill, you'll be able to do it really quickly. So do that for, about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on all of your expenses. And then just spend maybe an hour or an hour and a half. I'm thinking about how long it takes me to call, let's say 3 vendors and do the negotiation. So it's not a lot of time, but I think it's a lot of reward and value back to you. So I hope that you guys can give it a shot and see. So, we talked about that financial map and why we want to prioritize spending, and just about when we do, we can actually earn money back from ourselves by adjusting the way we behave with spending, and realize that we are an additional source of income for ourselves, in a sense of course correction. And then you can use the system that we've set up for you guys, super easy. And the important thing is make sure you do it frequently. The more frequently you do it, the more savings you'll be able to find, because you'll be able to catch things sooner. So this is all about building and establishing that routine that Andrew talked about. So same skill set, guys, just applying it to your financial side. And if you do, you're going to be able to generate some additional financial resources that you can put back into your music. We talked today about creating effective playing routines, and then how to plan for your financial future by, building a routine around this ERNS system. Tomorrow, we're really excited. Andrew's been talking about these bridges for days, and I'm really excited to hear his technique to musical mastery, as I know you are. And then we're going to get into taxes, and don't worry, it's going to be fun and interesting. I know taxes, just don't worry. Just try me. I think you're going to find this enjoyable, because it's going to, again, like the ERN system, we're going to show you something that's going to help you today. And then Friday, we've got the mental game and really investing yourself. And Friday, like we said, is just all about kind of stepping back and looking at the big picture, really thinking and planning, and how to set yourself up for success. But we want to say thank you guys all for, coming and joining us. And it's been really fun to show you guys the integration that we've done into our lives. And we hope you guys see that connection between music and money as much as we do. We hope you've learned something, which you guys definitely told us you did.
So if you're not yet a member of I Am Community on Facebook, please join the group, and then we can look at these questions to answer that too.
We look forward to hearing about all the successes and results you guys were able to achieve with what we talked about today.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye. Thanks, guys. See you tomorrow.